You wake early on a grey northern morning, kettle humming, heating ticking, the faint rattle of wind against the window of the house you worked 20 years to pay for. And you tell yourself you are steady, you are sensible, you have survived interest rate shocks, energy bills, Brexit, pandemics, and every headline that tried to frighten you out of your sleep. Your town may not be glossy London. It may be Blackpool or Middlesbrough or Sunderland, but it is yours. Your mortgage statement sits neatly filed, your council tax paid by direct debit, your pride intact. Then it happens. A brown envelope lands on your doormat, not junk mail, not a flyer, an official crest, a demand, a notice. And in that moment, your stomach tightens, because you can feel it before you even open it. Welcome to the municipal extraction crisis of 2026. This is not just about struggling high streets or empty shops in Bradford or the Nissan plant in Sunderland cutting back. This is about you. It is about bankrupt. Local councils staring down Section 114 notices, staring at collapsing business rates, staring at rising social care bills, and deciding the only stable asset left in their territory is your home. So before we go any further, understand this channel exists for one reason. We fight back with information. When you subscribe, you're not boosting an ego, you're strengthening a public shield against a system that counts on your silence. Because while the newsreader talks about deprivation indices and insolvency statistics, the real story hides in the small print of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, and the emergency tax flexibilities quietly expanded as councils plead exceptional hardship. Growth has stalled. Insolvencies sit near 30-year highs. Unemployment edges upward. Frozen thresholds lock more of you into higher council tax bands in real terms, as property values creep but wages stagnate. Councils such as those in Blackpool and Bradford have already secured permission to raise council tax above the usual cap. They frame it as survival. They call it necessity. But when the algorithm flags your property for a bad review, when arrears systems auto-generate recovery notices, when liability orders stack up in magistrates' courts at industrial scale, the trap snaps shut fast. You think you are safe because you pay on time. You are not. In 2026, councils face funding gaps measured in tens of millions. They have cut libraries, youth centres, bin collections. There is very little left to cut. So they look at enforcement, they look at revaluations, they look at aggressive recovery, and they look at you. This is where the cruelty of the system truly shines, because it does not arrive with sirens. It arrives politely, legally, relentlessly. And what most homeowners in these 10 struggling areas still do not realise is how quickly a routine demand can escalate into something far more permanent. Now you need to understand how they actually find you, how they build the case, how they move from spreadsheet to summons without ever knocking on your door. Because this is no longer a simple arrears letter. This is data-driven enforcement at scale in 2026. You imagine a council officer leafing through files. That is not what happens. First, the algorithm flags your property. Automated systems cross-reference council tax records with land registry updates, tenancy deposit schemes, electoral roll changes, and credit reference agency feeds. If your property in Blackpool or Oldham recently changed hands, if you converted a loft, if you switched from owner-occupier to rental, the system logs it instantly. Then it escalates. Councils are increasingly using data analytics platforms that scrape planning portals, compare declared square footage with comparable bandings, and highlight anomalies. A small extension you thought was minor? The software spots it. A second home left empty in Grimsby, while blast furnaces close nearby. Empty property premiums kick in automatically under the Local Government Finance Act 1992 as amended. sometimes doubling your bill after 12 months, sometimes tripling it after 2 years. You think that is the end of it. It is not. Smart meter data, while primarily energy supplier controlled, feeds into wider data sets about occupancy patterns. Councils collaborate with data brokers to identify long-term empties, short-term lets, undeclared rentals. Neighbour reporting portals allow anonymous tip-offs. One disgruntled tenant in Middlesbrough clicks a form. The system opens a compliance check. The surveillance ladder climbs higher. Open banking legislation and credit agency markers reveal financial stress before you ever pick up the phone. Miss 2 payments. The recovery timetable activates. Reminder notice. Final notice. Liability order application in the magistrate's court, often in bulk sessions, processing hundreds of cases in minutes. You are not a person in that room. You are a reference number. Then the damage lands. Imagine a widowed father in Sunderland, 2 children, working shifts at the Nissan plant, while voluntary redundancies circulate. He falls behind by £1,200 after hours are cut. He thinks he can catch up next month. The council does not wait. They add £90 in summons costs, then £325 in compliance fees once enforcement agents receive the liability order. Bailiffs arrive. Another £235 enforcement stage fee if they visit. The £1,200 becomes over £1,850 within weeks. If they remove goods, sales stage fees stack on top. This is where the cruelty of the system truly shines. The law allows it. Councils argue they must collect to protect essential services. Bankrupt local councils facing Section 114 notices say enforcement is non-negotiable. In Bradford, with a £120 million structural gap, every pound counts. In Hartlepool, where nearly 30% of working-age residents are economically inactive, collection rates become a political survival metric. Backdating makes it worse. If the council rebans your property after an extension, they can backdate the higher band to the date of alteration. 3 years of difference at £600 per year becomes £1,800 overnight. Add court costs. Add premiums. The trap snaps shut before you have even argued your case. You tell yourself they cannot pursue you if you are genuinely struggling. You believe there must be a hardship buffer. Here is the myth, that councils must prove deliberate wrongdoing before escalating. They do not. Council tax is a strict liability charge. If it is due, it is due. Intent does not matter. Ability to pay does not stop the court granting a liability order. Magistrates rarely interrogate the underlying calculation. They check process, not fairness. You think you are safe because you have never missed a payment before. You are not. In 2026, frozen central government grants, rising adult social care costs, and shrinking business rates from shuttered high streets in Burnley and Stoke-on-Trent push councils toward aggressive recovery as policy, not exception. Once the liability order is granted, councils can pursue attachment of earnings, deductions from universal credit, charging orders against your home, even bankruptcy for larger sums. A £3,000 debt can snowball beyond £5,000 with fees and interest equivalents through enforcement costs. And the most dangerous belief of all is that you can ignore the early letters and negotiate later. By the time you decide to act, the enforcement machine is already moving, automated, standardized, relentless, and designed to extract first and explain later. You may still be clinging to right now is this: that once a liability order is made, you have no leverage, no defense, no realistic way to slow the machine. That belief is exactly what keeps the machine running. So let us dismantle it calmly and clinically. Under the Local Government Finance Act 1992, councils must calculate liability correctly, must issue demand notices in prescribed form, and must follow the Council Tax Administration and Enforcement Regulations 1992 precisely. If they misstate the band, misapply a premium, fail to consider a statutory discount, or backdate beyond what the alteration rules allow, the debt figure is legally flawed. And a flawed figure poisons every step that follows. Imagine your property in Oldham was rebanded from C to D after an extension. The annual difference is £480. They backdate 3 years. £1,440 appears on your account. Add £90 summons costs and £325 compliance fees. You are staring at £1,855. But if the extension qualified as a material increase that should only take effect after a sale under the listing officer rules, that backdating collapses. The £1,440 vanishes. The fees tied to it become challengeable. The number shrinks dramatically. Now escalate the nightmare. Suppose arrears plus premiums on an empty flat in Grimsby total £6,500 after 2 years at a 200% charge. The council secures a liability order and moves for a charging order against your home. You feel the floor drop. You imagine repossession. You picture bankruptcy. This is the emotional nadir. The trap snaps shut and you see no exit. But you do not have to be a victim of this system. Stop. Take a breath. The law has boundaries, and when you know them, you are not helpless. Here is your Council Tax Survival Guide for 2026. And Strategy 1 is what I call the procedural strike. It is not loud. It is precise. It relies on your right to demand a full written breakdown of liability, including band history, discount application, premium justification, and the date basis for any backdating. Under Regulation 34 of the 1992 Enforcement Regulations and reinforced by principles in cases such as R v Brent, London Borough Council ex parte Barrower, councils must act within proper administrative bounds. In plain English, they must show they're working. Your actionable step is simple but powerful. Submit a formal written request for a statement of account, a copy of the liability order, and the calculation basis for every charge. And do it before enforcement escalates further. You do not rant. You do not plead. You request documents. When the algorithm flags your property, it assumes you will not interrogate it. When you demand evidence, you slow the process and expose errors that occur far more often than councils admit, especially in areas under severe fiscal strain like Bradford with its £120 million structural gap, or Blackpool with thousands of empty homes subject to premiums. This is where the cruelty of the system truly shines. But it is also where its weakness hides. Scale. Bulk processing creates mistakes. Frozen thresholds and emergency flexibilities create complexity. Complexity breeds error. If even £2,000 of a £5,000 claim is miscalculated, enforcement leverage changes overnight. You think you are safe because you have always trusted official paperwork. You are not. You are safe when you verify it. The procedural strike reclaims time, and time is oxygen in enforcement. Oxygen lets you negotiate, appeal to the Valuation Tribunal for England if banding is wrong, or apply for statutory reductions under Section 13A, discretionary relief where hardship genuinely bites. Do not panic. Do not surrender. The first blow is not theirs to land unchallenged. You have seen how the demand forms, how the numbers inflate, how the liability order makes you feel cornered. But this is where empowerment replaces panic, because strategy 2 is what I call the silence breaker. And it addresses the single biggest mistake homeowners make in Blackpool, Middlesbrough, Oldham, Sunderland, and every other pressured authority in 2026, which is ignoring the early letters out of fear. You think if you stay quiet, it might slow down. It does the opposite. Under the Council Tax Administration and Enforcement Regulations 1992, once you miss an instalment and fail to respond to a reminder within 7 days, the council can cancel your right to pay monthly and demand the full year at once. That is how a manageable £180 monthly instalment becomes a £1,980 annual demand overnight. So your actionable step is brutally simple. Respond in writing before the second reminder expires and request to reinstate instalments. Many councils will agree if you engage early, because recovery targets focus on speed, not punishment. The emotional payoff is control. You stop the snowball before the trap snaps shut. Strategy 3 is the data firewall, and this is where you fight surveillance with law. Under the Data Protection Act 2018 and UK GDPR Article 15, you have the right to submit a subject access request demanding every piece of personal data the council holds about you, including algorithmic risk scores, cross-referencing flags, and internal notes. Under Article 22, you can challenge decisions based solely on automated processing that produce significant effects. In plain English, if the algorithm flags your property for premium escalation or enforcement prioritization, you can demand human review. Your step is to file a formal subject access request and explicitly ask whether automated decision-making contributed to enforcement. This forces transparency. It slows automated momentum. It often exposes sloppy data sharing with credit reference agencies or mismatched occupancy records. You think you are safe because you have nothing to hide. You are not. You are protected when you understand who is watching and why. Strategy 4 is the hardship lever, the last resort mechanism for those already staring at bailiff visits. Section 13A1C of the Local Government Finance Act 1992 gives councils discretionary power to reduce council tax liability in individual cases. They rarely advertise it because bankrupt local councils fear opening floodgates, but the power exists. Your step is to submit a detailed hardship application with evidence of income, expenditure, and vulnerability, referencing Section 13A explicitly. This is not begging, it is invoking statutory discretion. In areas facing Section 114 notices, councils claim they have no choice, but the law still grants them choice. This is where the cruelty of the system truly shines. But it is also where humanity can still surface when properly invoked. Strategy 5 is the charging order shield for those already hit with a liability order and facing security against their home. If the council seeks a charging order in the county court, you attend the hearing and challenge proportionality, especially where the debt is modest relative to equity. Courts consider fairness under the Charging Orders Act 1979. Even if the order is granted, forcing sale requires a further step, and courts weigh family circumstances heavily. The emotional payoff here is perspective. A charging order is serious, but it is not instant eviction. Welcome to the municipal extraction crisis of 2026, where frozen central grants, rising social care costs, and collapsing business rates create a stealth tax environment that feels like a wealth grab on ordinary homeowners. But remember this, the state is punishing normal people for systemic failure. The system only wins if you comply in ignorance. Memorize this phrase. Request the breakdown, demand the data, invoke Section 13A. Keep copies of every letter. Install calendar reminders for response deadlines. Share this video with neighbors because collective awareness weakens automated enforcement. Tell me in the comments if a brown envelope has landed on your doormat and what your council demanded, because your story strengthens everyone watching. We are building a shield of knowledge in towns that feel forgotten. Subscribe, not for me, but for each other. Stay strong, know the law, and challenge every demand in writing. I will see you in the next one.